The sun beat down on the small-town park, scattering long shadows across the empty swings and worn-out benches. A little girl, no older than 7, stood in the center of the playground, clutching a ragged stuffed bear, tears streaking her dirt-smudged cheeks. She looked at the line of motorcycles parked haphazardly along the curb. Black Harleys, chrome gleaming in the sunlight, leather jackets waving in the slight breeze. The riders leaned against their bikes, watching her with curiosity, their hardened faces softening as a tiny voice broke the silence. Will you be my family?" she asked, voice trembling. The bikers exchanged glances, some trying to mask the flicker of emotion, others unable to hide the surprise. No one had ever asked them something so raw, so honest. One of the bikers, a woman with a commanding presence and a Hell's Angels cut that gleamed under the sun, stepped forward. Her name was Cassie Torres, known for her strength, loyalty, and the subtle kindness she showed to those the world overlooked. "You want us to be your family?" she asked gently, kneeling down to meet the girl's eyes. The little girl nodded vigorously, clutching her bear tighter. "Please. I don't have anyone." For a moment, silence fell over the playground. The motorcycles hummed faintly in the heat, and the air was thick with tension, a mix of uncertainty, curiosity, and unspoken understanding. Cassie glanced at her crew, 20 women who rode together with the same fierce loyalty, and saw the unspoken question in their eyes. Could they really take on this responsibility? Could they step into the role of family for a child who had been abandoned, ignored, and forgotten? Then, with a soft smile, Cassie reached out her hand. "All right," she said. "Let's see if we can be the family you've been looking for." The little girl's eyes widened, hope flickering like sunlight through storm clouds. She took Cassie's hand, and in that instant, the world felt a little less cold, a little less lonely. But the townspeople who had been watching from the edges of the park didn't know what was coming next. A chain of events that would ripple through the town, leaving every witness in tears. The journey had begun. The little girl, whose name was Lila, clung to Cassie's hand as the bikers led her away from the empty park and toward a quiet corner of town. The other women in the crew circled around, each one offering small smiles, gentle nods, and quiet encouragement. Their Harleys rumbled softly in the background, a protective hum that seemed to reassure Lila in a way words never could. Cassie glanced down at her. "So, tell us about you. Where's home?" Lila's eyes lowered, and she hugged her bear tighter. I don't have one. Mom and Dad, they aren't here anymore." Her voice quavered. The bikers exchanged glances, a mixture of sadness and resolve settling over the group. This was more than a moment of kindness. It was a call to action, an invitation to step into a role that required courage, patience, and a heart bigger than most could imagine. Cassie knelt beside Lila, her leather jacket creaking softly. "You're safe with us now. We'll make sure you're looked after." Lila blinked, trying to process the weight of the promise. She had been alone for so long that the idea of being truly protected felt almost unreal. "Really?" she whispered. "Really," Cassie said, her voice steady but warm. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. We ride together. That means family." The bikers spent the rest of the afternoon showing Lila their world, the roar of engines, the smell of leather and gasoline, the subtle rituals of loyalty and respect that marked their tribe. For the first time, Lila laughed freely, her small hands brushing the chrome of a Harley, eyes wide with awe and delight. Even the townspeople who had lingered at a distance began to watch in astonishment. A little girl, abandoned and alone, now surrounded by a crew of 20 women, each one exuding strength, courage, and unwavering loyalty. The image was cinematic, almost surreal, yet the emotions were raw and real. By evening, Lila had learned her place among them. Not as a visitor, but as part of the family she had longed for. Cassie guided her to a small patch of grass near the motorcycles. "This is your spot," she said. "Whenever you're ready, you can sit here with us, ride with us, and learn what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief, hope, and joy. She had asked for a family, and, in the span of a single day, The Hells Angels women had become exactly that. Yet, even as laughter and warmth filled the air, Cassie sensed something in the shadows. The town's whispers, the lingering doubts, the questions that might challenge their new bond. Protection wasn't just physical. It was emotional, social, and sometimes, legal. And Cassie knew they had to prove that family wasn't just about blood, but about courage, loyalty, and standing up for someone when no one else would. As dusk settled over the town, a quiet unease crept into the air. Lila laughed and played near the motorcycles, her small feet kicking up dust, unaware of the tension creeping closer. But Cassie's instincts were razor-sharp. She had seen danger before, sometimes subtle, sometimes violent, and her gut told her that someone from Lila's past might try to interfere. Later that evening, while the crew gathered near the diner for a late meal, a black SUV slowly rolled past, engine humming softly. Its windows were tinted, but the shadows of two men inside were unmistakable. Cassie noticed immediately, her gaze hardening. "They're watching," she murmured to her second-in-command, Roxy, who nodded sharply. The women instinctively moved closer to Lila, forming a protective perimeter. Logan, a father who had been quietly observing the group, frowned. "Who are they?" Cassie shook her head. "Someone from her past. People who don't want her safe, people who think she belongs to no one." The SUV lingered at the corner of the street, headlights cutting through the dim glow of the diner. Lila's small laugh rang out, oblivious to the threat, clutching her bear as if it were armor against the unknown. Cassie's voice dropped to a firm whisper. "We need to make sure they know, Lila belongs to us now. And no one threatens our family." Roxy stepped forward, her leather boots crunching against the gravel. "Time to remind them." The bikers mounted their Harleys, engines roaring like thunder in the quiet town. The SUV tried to pull away, but the sound of 20 motorcycles behind it was unmistakable. The bikers surrounded the vehicle, blocking every escape. Cassie stepped off her bike, towering in authority and resolve. "You're not going anywhere," she said calmly, but with unmistakable strength. The men inside the SUV looked startled, realizing too late that they had underestimated the courage and unity of this crew. We were just passing by," one stammered. "Passing by." Cassie's voice cut like steel. "You've been watching a child. You've been trying to intimidate her. That ends tonight." One of the bikers, Mara, leaned close to the SUV window, her voice low and icy. "Leave town, or next time, you won't walk away." The SUV hesitated, then slowly backed away, disappearing down the empty streets. Cassie turned back to Lila, who had watched the confrontation with wide eyes. The girl's small hand found Cassie's, gripping it tightly. "You're safe," Cassie whispered. "Nothing can touch you as long as we're here." For the first time in years, Lila felt the unshakable comfort of protection, not just physical, but moral and emotional. The Hells Angels women had become more than allies. They were her family, bound by courage, loyalty, and the promise that no one would harm her again. Later, as the night grew quiet, Cassie gathered the crew. "Tonight proved something," she said, her voice solemn but proud. "Family isn't about blood. It's about standing up for each other, even when fear is all around. And that's what we've done for Lila." Lila slept that night curled up next to Cassie, her small face peaceful. Outside, the town remained unaware of the storm that had been averted, a storm held back by courage, moral strength, and the unwavering bond of women who chose to be family. The following days brought a rhythm to Lila's life she had never known, one filled with warmth, laughter, and the steady hum of Harleys in the distance. The 20 women of the crew rotated shifts, making sure someone was always near her, teaching her lessons small and large, how to ride safely on a motorcycle, how to read people's intentions, and how courage wasn't about fighting but about standing tall when it mattered. Cassie took a special role, sitting with Lila at the edge of the park each morning, guiding her hands as they planted a small flower garden beside the bikes. "See," Cassie said softly, brushing soil from her fingers. "You can grow something beautiful anywhere, even in places people forget about." Lila's smile was radiant, her eyes brightening with each day. For the first time, she felt ownership of a space, a sense of belonging, and the tangible presence of people who would never leave her side. The other women helped too. Mara taught her to fix a tire, Roxy showed her how to check oil, and even the quiet ones shared soft words of encouragement. Each act, no matter how small, reinforced the lesson. Family wasn't just people you were born to, family was people who chose to stand by you. Logan, who had been watching quietly from the diner, was struck by the transformation. The little girl who had once clung to a torn stuffed bear now laughed freely, riding alongside the women on training bikes, her tiny helmet perched securely. He realized that courage and love, even in unconventional forms, could heal wounds invisible to the eye. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, the crew gathered around a makeshift fire near the parking lot. Lila sat in the middle, her cheeks glowing in the firelight. She looked at the women surrounding her, her little voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being my family." Cassie knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around the girl. "No, sweetheart. You brought us together. You reminded us why we ride, why we protect, and why family is more than blood. You reminded us what matters most." The bikers nodded, silent yet profoundly moved. Each one had been hardened by life on the road, but Lila's presence softened something deep within them, a reminder of innocence, hope, and the moral strength of protecting those who could not protect themselves. Even the townspeople, initially skeptical, began to notice the change. The girls' laughter rang across the park, unafraid, unashamed, and undeniably loved. Whispers of admiration spread, stories of bikers showing heart, of women defying stereotypes, and of a little girl who had found her tribe. That night, Lila curled up in her new corner beside Cassie, looking up at the stars. The motorcycles hummed softly nearby, a lullaby of protection. For the first time in years, she felt safe, cherished, and home. And in that moment, Cassie understood that building a home wasn't about walls or roofs, it was about courage, loyalty, and love made visible through action. The next morning, the town began to stir, the sun spilling light across streets that had once seemed ordinary, even dull. But something had changed. Word had spread about the little girl and the bikers who had stepped into her life. Whispers traveled from coffee shops to corner stores. "Did you see them? 20 women, all bikers, protecting her." Even the adults who had once doubted the angel's presence now watched with newfound respect. There was a sense of awe and disbelief as they observed the warmth and loyalty the crew displayed toward Lila. These were women who had once been seen as dangerous outsiders, yet now they represented courage, moral strength, and unwavering protection. Lila, unaware of the attention she had drawn, played near the motorcycles, laughing and running in wide circles. Each time she glanced at Cassie or Mara, their reassuring smiles reminded her she was safe, loved, and part of a family that would not falter. Cassie leaned on her Harley, arms crossed, scanning the town quietly. She noticed neighbors peeking through windows, curiosity giving way to admiration. "They're starting to understand," she said softly to Roxy. "Family isn't just a word, it's action. They're seeing it now." Roxy nodded. "And Lila, she's showing them what it means to ask for love, even when the world has left you behind." Suddenly, a group of townspeople approached, hesitantly at first. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, her eyes soft but wary. I just wanted to say, thank you," she said, voice trembling. "You've done something I never imagined. You've shown what family really means." Cassie tilted her head, careful not to break the calm authority that defined her. "We're not here for thanks. We're here because someone needed a family. And now, she has one." Children who had once avoided Lila now ran up to join her in play. The air, once tinged with skepticism and fear, became alive with joy, laughter, and trust. The presence of the bikers had transformed the town's perception, showing that strength paired with kindness could bridge any divide. Logan, watching from the diner, felt a lump in his throat. He had expected danger, chaos, and tension, not this quiet, transformative force. The little girl's courage to ask for a family had awakened something in everyone around her: hope, empathy, and the understanding that moral courage could inspire change even in the most unlikely of communities. By the end of the day, Lila stood at the center of the park, her tiny figure framed by the circle of women who had become her family. Cassie reached down, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. "You see, Lila," Cassie said softly, "family isn't about who gave you life. It's about who chooses to fight for it. And that's exactly what we did, and what you've taught this town as well." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the townspeople slowly began to disperse, leaving Lila surrounded by the women who had become her family. For the first time, the girl understood that love, protection, and loyalty weren't abstract ideas. They were real, tangible, and worth standing up for. And the town, once indifferent, began to shift. They were witnessing a living lesson in courage, morality, and the extraordinary power of chosen family. The following morning, Lila woke to the soft hum of motorcycles idling nearby, the sun spilling golden light across the small town. She scrambled out of her temporary bed, excitement bubbling in her chest. Today, the women had promised something special, a ride through the outskirts of town, a small taste of the freedom and trust that came with being part of their family. Cassie knelt beside her, adjusting her tiny helmet. "Ready, kiddo?" "Yes." Lila squealed, hopping onto the passenger seat of Cassie's Harley. The other women lined up on their bikes, engines roaring softly in unison. There was a rhythm to it, a pulse of loyalty and protection that made Lila's heart beat faster. As they rode, the townspeople watched in awe. Mothers stopped their chores, shopkeepers paused mid-task, and children stood at the curb, eyes wide with wonder. This was no longer a story of fear or misunderstanding. This was a lesson in courage, kindness, and the bonds forged through action, not blood. Cassie guided the group through winding streets, showing Lila the subtle ways bikers cared for each other, how they moved in unison, watched each other's backs, and maintained a silent, unspoken trust. Lila giggled with delight, her small hands gripping tightly, eyes sparkling with newfound confidence. At a quiet overlook outside town, the group stopped. Lila climbed down, looking over the horizon with awe. It's beautiful," she whispered. Cassie wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "This is your world now, too. You belong here, not just with us, but with the strength, loyalty, and courage we all carry. Family isn't just a place. It's a promise." One of the bikers, Mara, knelt to Lila's level. "And we're keeping that promise. Always." In that moment, the little girl felt it, the unshakable bond of chosen family, forged not in comfort or ease, but in protection, courage, and unwavering moral strength. She wasn't just a child seeking love. She was a beacon, a reminder to all who saw her that compassion and bravery could reshape the world around them. Back in town, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations into admiration. People who had once looked at the bikers with suspicion now watched with respect. The women had done more than protect Lila. They had inspired the town, showing that courage and kindness could exist in even the toughest shells. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Lila sat on the grass beside Cassie, hugging her bear and watching the bikes glint in the fading light. "Thank you for everything," she murmured. Cassie smiled, her voice gentle but firm. "No, Lila. Thank you. You reminded us what family really is, loyalty, protection, and standing up for each other, no matter what." For the first time in her life, Lila felt safe, cherished, and truly part of something greater than herself. And the women around her knew that this bond, forged in steel, courage, and love, would endure forever. The next morning, the town woke to a calm unlike any it had seen before. The sun cast warm light over the streets, glinting off the chrome of parked Harleys, the echoes of the previous day's rides lingering like a heartbeat. Lila stood in the center of the park, her small hands clutching her bear, surrounded by 20 women whose presence radiated strength, loyalty, and love. Cassie knelt to meet Lila's eyes. "You've shown courage, little one. Not by fighting, but by asking for what you deserved, a family. And now, you have one." Tears welled in Lila's eyes as she looked at the women who had become her guardians, protectors, and friends. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to, Cassie replied softly. Your life says it all. Your courage brought us together, and together, we'll make sure nothing can ever harm you again. The townspeople, who had watched from a distance, slowly approached, some hesitant, some inspired. They had seen firsthand the transformative power of loyalty and protection, and their skepticism had turned to admiration. Mothers hugged their children a little tighter, shopkeepers nodded in respect, and whispers of gratitude spread across the town. Logan, who had been quietly observing the scene, stepped forward. I've never seen anything like this, he said. You didn't just protect her, you changed a whole town. Cassie smiled faintly, her eyes softening. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage ripple outward. It's not about being loud or violent. It's about showing up, choosing loyalty, and standing by those who need you most. As the day settled into golden evening light, Lila ran to the playground swings, laughter ringing through the air. The women mounted their bikes, engines humming like a steady heartbeat, and rode alongside her in silent solidarity, a living testament to protection, courage, and chosen family. The little girl who had once asked for a family had not only found it, she had inspired it, shaped it, and reminded everyone that courage, love, and loyalty were forces stronger than fear, prejudice, or doubt. Family is more than blood. It is the loyalty and courage to protect and uplift those who need it most. Bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steadfast, and rooted in moral strength. Even the smallest voice can inspire profound change when met with love and action. Chosen family, forged through trust and protection, can heal wounds the world leaves behind. In the end, standing up for the innocent, offering kindness, and embodying courage is the truest measure of strength.